Hi, everyone, and welcome back to week three of public speaking. This week, we're going to discuss transitions, introductions, and conclusions. So, even the previous weeks, we have discussed about the importance of researching and finding a topic, developing an outline, and also covering what informative speech is. I would like to round up all of the materials that we have covered so far by talking about the importance of these three components. Let's start with the first slide. So, I want to start by asking the questions, why are they so important? In your textbook, you will see that the author discusses about the importance of goodwill. And why the author was emphasizing on goodwill is because public speaking is basically audience oriented. And we as a speaker demonstrates this idea of goodwill toward our audience by having clear organizations. Because basically the purpose of public speaking is not to provide yourself with information, but to actually communicate your ideas to your audience. So this means thinking about how we, as speakers, can make the presentations as clear as possible for our audience. And we do this by creating engaging introduction, using clear transitions, and writing memorable conclusions. So, what is the purpose of an introduction? We understand that there are three purposes of an introduction. One is to establish goodwill, showing to your audience that you have their interests at heart. So, it's not only to serve your personal interests, but you're sharing this information because you're trying to share good, positive information for your audience. And also, you want to establish your credibility. Who are you to talk about this topic? You need to explain this, and I have already mentioned this in my previous slides, the importance of convincing your audience that you actually know what you're talking about and that your audience need to listen to you. So that's part of establishing credibility. And then to explain why you're speaking. So remember with our three main goals of public speaking, whether it is to inform, to persuade, or to celebrate, then if you have your informative speech in mind, then your goal, you have to say that. So today I would like to share with you some information about yoga or about, for instance, veganism or about coronavirus. So, whatever it is that you're going to talk about, explain where you're talking about it. So, here are components of an introductions. The first one is actually attention getter. Here we have to have a teaser to basically try to make our audience interested in what we're going to talk about. And when we're thinking about attention getter, we also need to think how effective and appropriate the teaser is going to be. In your textbook, and I do encourage you to read more about this, the book explores some techniques to use for attention getter. And those techniques include quotation, acknowledging the speaking situation, asking rhetorical question, and then asking your audience to visualize and telling a story or joke, and last but not least, start providing startling fact or statistics. And then after you actually get your audience attention, you want to make sure that you are going to relate to your audience. So in this part of the introduction, you answer the question of so what. So what after you have piqued their attention and their interest? What is it that you are going to talk about that's going to be beneficial for them? So then you reveal your topic by stating your thesis statement, and then you provide a preview of what your main ideas are going to be about. So, for instance, if you're going to talk about yoga, then you will say that in this speech, I'm going to talk about the history of yoga, and then after that, I'm going to talk about the poses that you can try at home if you are new to yoga. And then last but not least, I'm going to talk about why yoga is beneficial for you, for instance. So you want to make sure that you preview your three main ideas that you're going to talk about in your speech. Okay, so again, these are the four components of an introduction: attention getter, relating to your audience, thesis statement, as well as a preview statement. All right, so now we're going to talk about things that you need to remember. One thing that is very important about an introduction is that it's going to take around 10 to 15% of your whole speech. So if you have a speech of 5 to 7 minutes, that means that you're going to spend around 60 to 90 seconds of your speech to talk about the introduction. So you want the introduction to be short but effective. You want to establish all of the important component in that, but you don't want it to be too long, because you also want to make sure that you will have enough time to cover the main ideas of your speech. So that's why I say that you want to make sure that you leave big information for the body of the speech. And most of the time, the most effective way to actually develop your introduction is by nailing down the body of the speech first. So by writing down the body of the speech, then you can think about how to best introduce your topic after you're done with the body of the speech. And you want to make sure that when you open your speech, you're going to show enthusiasm. This is very important because you want to engage your audience. And if you're not enthusiastic about your own topic, it's going to be a bit challenging for your audience to feel that they have something invested in the topic that you're discussing. So that's why showing enthusiasm when you introduce a topic is also very important. And I want you to think about the primacy effect, the fact that people remember what they hear first. Your book talk about the importance of first impression. So yeah, like it or not, we as audience pay attention to when you first start your speech. So keep in mind that idea of primacy effect. Now, the next one that I would like to cover is actually about transitions. We have discussed about introduction. Now we want to talk about connectives. So, connective is a word or phrase that connects the idea of a speech and indicates the relationship among them. And there are four types of connectives. One is transition. The second one is internal previews. Third is internal summaries. And the last one is signpost. So when you're thinking about transition, you're thinking about how you're going to transition from one idea to another. I always tell my students that it's like when you are driving and then you give turn signal so that the people behind you, the driver behind you, will know that you're going to turn right or you're going to turn left. Without giving turn signal, you're going to confuse the drivers that are driving behind you. And in this case, you're going to confuse your audience, because your audience needs you to hold their hands and let them know that next, this is what you're going to talk about. And after that, this is what you're going to talk about. Remember the idea of goodwill, telling your audience that you care about them and showing them by having clear organizations? Well, transitions do just that. And then the next one is we're talking about internal previews. And we have discussed this, how you should end your introduction with a preview of what's coming. What is it that you're going to discuss in your body of the speech? And when you're done, then you need to give an internal summaries, right? So what are the things that you have covered? And these are the things that you want your audience to remember. Signposts, just like its name, is basically telling your audience, giving your audience signs so that they can mark this important information in their mind. So examples of signposts are like first, second, third, and fourth. And then the next one is we're going to talk about the purpose of a conclusion. So the purpose of a conclusion is to signal the end of the speech. And a conclusion has four main components, which is summary of the main points. And then this is where you're going to tie up all the loose ends. And then you're going to give final impressions. And then you're going to offer closure. When you're thinking about creating a conclusion, these are the things that I want you to remember. First, that I need you to review statement. You need to recap your main ideas so that your audience can remember what are the important things that you want them to remember from your speech. Yeah? And then give a primary takeaway. What is that one thing that they should remember after they listen and watch your presentation? And then give a memorable ending, a thought-provoking closure. And another thing to remember is that conclusion is basically 5 to 10% of your speech. So again, go back to that 5 to 7 minutes informative speech. I want you to basically allocate at least 45 seconds up to 70 seconds of your speech to talk about your conclusion, to wrap up the things that you have delivered in your speech. And I want you to also remember that you're not supposed to bring in new information. I want you to remember that you need to leave big things for the body. And I want you, just like when I was talking about the introduction, to prepare the body of the speech first. And the purpose, again, for the conclusion is to reinforce the central idea. And here's the last thing that I want you to remember. This is what we call it as the recency effect, that people remember what they hear last. I know first impression is important, but people also remember what they hear last. All right, so that's it, the mini lecture for this week. And I want you to start thinking about these lecture check questions. There's only one discussion board for this week. And in that discussion board, you're going to have to answer 3 questions. Answer each question and respond to your classmates' answers to receive full points for your discussion activity this week. So the first thing that I would like you to do is to watch this short TED Talk video and focus on how the speaker introduces the topic, transitions from one idea to the next, and concludes the speech. Then share your thoughts on those 3 components. Do you think he did an effective job? Why or why not? And then answer the next questions. How can we as speakers better connect with our audience who has a rapidly shortening attention span? How can you keep them engaged from beginning to end? Offer at least one specific suggestion. And the last question is, what can a well-crafted conclusion do for your speech? That is, what benefit does this section bring to your speech? Similarly, what kind of impact can a bad conclusions have? So think about the answers to those 3 questions and answer all of them in the discussion board that I have set up for this week. Thanks everyone, and good luck.